Hey, welcome to the channel. I'm Brian. This is Hog Shooter Hot Rods, just a little shop where we work on cars pretty much all the time. Today, we're going to do some sheet metal fabrication. Our old 35 Chevy, it needs a set of running boards built for it. One, because the old ones are completely rusty and just bent all up. Two, when I originally started on the car, I widened the rear fenders by a few inches. Now the running boards don't fit exactly. So let's dive into this project and see what we can get done. Thank you for watching my videos. Won't you consider subscribing to the channel? That would be just awesome. Check out this running board here. Yeah, it looks nice, right? Nice flat sheet laying across here. It's like a clean slate. We'll talk about the reason for this in a second. Oh, it was hiding some stuff, right? You lift up the wrapper and there you go. So originally on these old cars, they had a flat piece of metal that was upholstered that laid on top of this area. And you can imagine that just like enabled the rust to eat away at the sheet metal for years and years. In a 1935 model car, it's gone. Not only that, but they're down low. You can see this is crushed up underneath it here. If you look down the edge, it's pretty wavy in there. So they're just going to be too much to try to straighten these. And look at the flange up here where it would bolt on. It's pitted. There's rust holes in it. We can't use this stuff, so we've got to do something different. Now, if we had an unlimited budget, we could go out and buy a set of these running boards, and I think I saw smooth steel boards for one of these cars listed at about $800 a pair. We're going to use a couple of pieces of some 18 gauge sheet metal and save just a little bit of these running boards. And I believe we're going to be able to recreate them and make them work. One big reason that we're going to need to recreate and not just patch or fix the original is this back section on the car. The fenders are now this wide. So we've got to have a little bit bigger running board. Now, I have this paper taped on here so that I can make a pattern. I need to know how much sheet metal. I need to know the difference in the width from the front to the back. We'll roll it completely under and cut it off, even with the front. And then we're going to just mark it at the back when we roll it under. We're going to go to the edge of the flange, mark the length of the paper, and then we're going to add 3 inches to that so that we come out with the right size. I've already got my blank over here. I bead rolled this one in my fancy super modified Harbor Freight bead roller, and it came out fairly well. You can see the piece of sheet metal is kind of wavy, but when we bend this 90-degree angle in here, that's all going to go away. That is coming up, okay? First thing we got to do is we got to have an accurate mark of what we're going to keep on our existing running board. So I've laid masking paper with tape on it. You could use anything that you can work with. Chipboard is something that I've seen a lot of guys use. It is super popular. And all I've done is I've just come in here with my spray paint and I've painted this edge. So as you can imagine, that gives us a nice crisp line right across there. That's going to represent what we're recreating. We're going to build the running board up to that point and plan on either butt welding it across here. I don't usually do any kind of steps or lap welding in my restoration, but this could be an exception because this stuff is really pitted and rusty. I'm going to have to re-sandblast this anyway before I would weld it because it's just too dirty to mess with. So that's that end of the stencil. We've got it nailed down. We know where it needs to go. This edge, you've noticed I cut the paper off even with this end and with the other end of the running board. So I'm only going to create this flat part, bend the roll, put the bead in it, and fold it under. I'll draw you out a picture of. So here you can kind of see the profile down here, but our running board, it goes from the car body, It's going to go out. It's going to go down. It's going to have a curve. It's going to come around. It's going to curve down. Exaggeration of the bead. The bead comes down, then it comes back and curls underneath. So that's not a terribly complex thing. The bead and getting this fold in are kind of the hard parts to make sure they're right. And then we got to put a gentle bend in it, and the radius isn't the same at the front fender as it is at the rear fender on this bend right here. So it's going to be a fairly complicated piece. We're going to have to really watch what we're doing and kind of plan ahead. This area here, we could rebuild it, but it's not that bad on this running board right here. And it does have a little odd step back here that we would have to go through and recreate again. And the thing is, it's fairly straight, but it's not 100% just straight through there. So I'm going to try to save what I can. I do have some rust through at this end, and I figure I can cut out that and I can patch that easy enough. We'll get that done, no problem. So let's keep going. Okay, this end, front fender, it stays exactly the same. So I went ahead and I just cut it all the way, even with the flange on the bottom. You can see this comes from the bead on the side, and it folds under about 3/4 of an inch. So, and you can also look at this and see why I have no interest in saving these running boards. They are bad. All right, so this end is going to be a little bit different because we got to make it wider. So I just put a little slit in my piece of paper right here so I can measure from that slit out and come up with the width of the fender after I modified it. Should be able just to take this edge, add the additional width of that fender, and come out with the exact thing. And we'll just go from that point and draw a line to that point, cut it, and we'll have our overall size of our blank of metal that we need to have. I hope. If we don't, we just messed up a 48-inch by 15-inch piece of sheet metal, and that would be a real drag. So you can kind of see here, I had the running board with a bolt locating it. When I widened the fenders, I had to remake flanges. I kept the holes in the standard, like stock location. But we can see here, we want our edge of our running board to stop right here where the bead ends. So I've got to measure from that running board over to that, and we're going to say we need about 1 3/4 extra, I guess. I really thought I made them wider than that, but I guess not. So I've got my piece of paper laid down on my piece of metal. It was kind of a fight for a minute to figure this out, because when I put that on that running board, I had this edge close to the car body. So it rolls and comes up and goes under the what we would normally consider the rocker area of the car. And then I came out here and I put a cut here and I put a cut down here, and that represents the full length of piece of metal that I need. So I had to come back and I cut this piece of metal off as a big rectangle, and I had to drop this down so that this edge, like this is where I marked the complete length of metal that I needed. There's a little slit there. I had to measure 1 3/4 inches down. Sorry, that's upside down. And I put a mark right here. So that mark is like right on the edge of the metal now. You can see how it's folded over there. So that should represent the full length of piece of metal that I need for this entire running board. So I'm going to have to come back. I'm going to have to mark this. Have to cut it again. Oh boy. The other issue that I had is, like, I cut everything square. Well, if you look at this end, she's not square. I've already got it marked what I need to trim off there. I may just leave it marked and wait until the end to trim it. I do plan to put a heavier piece of metal on the end of this, maybe even 1/8 inch steel. So I'm sure I've got something really solid to weld to. Down here, I didn't get as lucky. I come up a little bit short. And I mean, not a lot. right? It's going to be just that big of a piece of metal, probably 1.5 inches, 2 inches wide, and down, you know, that much of it. I can piece welded in. I don't mind showing my booger welds on the YouTube. I just TIG welded it really fast. It's 100% penetration. It's all going to get ground anyway, so who cares? And this line, it comes out like this so that this part matches the curvature of the rear fender. And so we'll lose a big majority of this piece. I just cut out a extra section that was here and we grafted him down there. Next job is to set up something so we can fold this edge. I measured the bead. It is 3/4 of an inch tall, so there's 1.5 inches here. We're going to end up with that 3/4 inch from the edge of this bead to the edge of where it turns over, and whatever's left rolls up underneath this thing. That'll finish that part. Then we've got to put the big curl in the whole part. Put the fold in my piece of sheet metal here. I don't have a press or a brake or anything that is 4 feet wide, so I had to kind of get ingenuitive. And you know, I debated on the order of operations, how to make this bend, this bead, and this roll in it, and there may be a better way out there to do it than what I'm doing, but this made sense to me, and my instincts say when it makes sense to you, that's the way to do it. So I needed something to clamp the metal down that wasn't going to give. So digging in the old scrap pile, I had a piece of grater blade. All right, so this is the cutting edge off of a road grater basically, and it's worn down really short. They discard them. Makes good steel to practice welding on and doing different stuff. So I took my piece of grater blade, I ground it off smooth, got all the rust scale and everything off, because down on that side of her, she's pretty ugly. But this side's nice and clean. So I have my flat surface so I could fold stuff over. Then I have this bead already in here, so my sheet metal has a step profile to it. So I didn't want to just clamp it down for fear of crushing that rolled in bead and ruining that bit of work. So I took a piece of, it's basically 1/8 inch by 1 inch strap. I scribed it, clamped it all down, used the plasma cutter, cut it, and then I tack welded it onto the edge of my grater blade. So now my piece of flat blade has a step that's about 1/8 of an inch tall, which is a little bit deeper than this bead needs to be, but I think it's going to work out really well. Then I had to have something to clamp on the top, so I went digging around, got an old piece of bed rail. You know, it's not super heavy, but this stuff is pretty decent for just holding that sheet metal down. So I've already put my piece of sheet metal up there, and I had it all clamped in, and I just took a Sharpie and I marked where my bend was going to be, because you're kind of blind at that point, you can't really tell. And then I have a scribe set up, and I ran that scribe from the top of that bead down just to see how close I was, and I was within, you know, a fat Sharpie line of being right where I need to be. So I think this is going to work out. We're going to clamp it down here and whack it with some hammers, and then So as I'm doing this, I'm working a little bit at a time to get this 90. I don't want to just beat this in one spot because I'll end up stretching the metal unevenly and end up with more of a waffled up edge than I'm going to anyway. So I'll start here, and I'll start by hitting that bottom edge, work through one pass, second pass, All right, so here you go, big reveal. Let's pop these clamps off. Yada! Okay, it's not too bad. I mean, you see my bead rolling work here. Not super straight, not perfect by any means. Missed my scribe mark by just a touch here, but not bad. You can look at what we're duplicating here. This is our factory. So we got the bead, we got the bend. Now we got to put this roll in this thing here. And that's probably going to take a few more days of thinking to figure out exactly how to do it, because you know, you got this radius here, and then this running board was bent really bad on that end, so I can't even go off that. I've got to go off the other running board as the best one to build a pattern from. So we'll take this and we'll go get done what we need to do. I was showing you, or talking about dividers. So this is what I did, is I just set that set of dividers to there. I laid it in my bead right here, and I put that mark, that scribe mark on it, and you can see we're really close on most of this thing. So hey, I'm happy with the progress so far. All right, so after all of our work, can you tell we got a little issue here? Our running board is working to be shaped like a banana. So I'm assuming that that is from so much stretching going on. Not like stretching your muscles out, but like when we put that bead in there, we put a step in, that stretched some metal. And then when I hammered it and I folded that metal over to make that 90 degree, that stretched some metal as well. Oh, I'm sorry, stretched some metal there. So we're going to take it over to the shrinker, and we're going to shrink this edge. As you can see, I've got my final line drawn back here. That's where my new piece should meet the existing piece, and then I came back 3/4 of an inch and made a line from that just so I have a little wiggle room there, because I've got to get the edge of the running board up here to match here and on this edge with my existing board. In the back of it, I've widened the fenders, so it's kind of an unknown right now. I mean, I can measure and get exactly what I need, but you know, working with sheet metal goes, sometimes your best guess may be off just a little bit. So we want to give ourselves some wiggle room. I did weld a patch panel in the front of this, and then I came back and I just filled some thin or rust holes with weld. There's several more in this. I mean, it's 100-year-old metal. There's not much left. So we're gonna cut this thing off and we'll be left with a little sliver. All right, so hopefully this makes more sense now with everything that I've been doing. Running boards are close. I've got to do a bunch more trimming on my piece here to get this all to butt weld together, and then we got to do some trimming, you know, to get that all to line up. But you can definitely see, I think we've achieved what we set out to do. That's tweaked because the clamp is hanging off of it, but we've got a new smooth running board built, and it actually all kind of lines up with the front fender. I can't finish the running board until the body's back on the chassis, but you can see the chassis is getting really close. I went and I put a new fuel tank in it. I have the fuel line run down the frame, pretty close anyway. Over here, you've seen shocks get in, all this other stuff. All the brake lines are run with the proper valves in them, all the way up to the front. Our front suspension's all redone. Steering shaft is remounted up there, all cleaned up nice. Still have this old mock-up motor in it. It'll probably stay in there until I'm ready to put the 283 in it, which I've been amassing parts for. So, hey, I really appreciate you guys watching the video. I know it's kind of split up and jumping all over the place to get this running board built, and in the end I just got one of them complete, so I still have to fabricate and do everything for the second one, and hopefully you can pick up a couple of tips here and there of what to do, or you know, maybe work harder, make money, and just buy your own. I don't know. I really enjoy building these parts. So at any rate, don't forget, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We'll catch you on the next one.